What's poppin', y'all? Ruff Ryders is not a collection of artists. Ruff Ryders is family first. To even be considered a Ruff Ryder, we have to consider you family. This is how Joaquin Dean describes the company Ruff Ryders Entertainment that he built with his sister and brother. The three siblings even pulled in their nephew Swizz Beatz when he was just a teenager to make music for their artists, and he grew into a super producer from the Ruff Ryder family business. Ruff Ryders Entertainment was the New York-based hip-hop record label and management company most known for bringing the superstar DMX into the world as a platinum-selling rapper of loud anthems to help listeners and himself get their anger out of the system. Although Ruff Ryders was established in 1988, it would be almost a decade later when DMX's massive success made it possible to expand Ruff Ryders from a management company into a record label imprint with the backing of Interscope. But the Dean trio didn't just stop with DMX rapping and Swizz Beatz producing. Their Yellow Brick Road to success also included The LOX and its three members, Jadakiss, Styles P, and Sheek Louch. The queen of the label, Eve, along with Dragon and the Asian battle rapper Jin. Then there was the lyricist Cassidy out of Philadelphia and the energetic Atlanta rapper Young One, who were both signed to Ruff Ryders through Swizz Beatz imprint Full Surface. Ruff Ryders began to get the ball rolling in '88 when brother Joaquin finished serving time in prison for armed robbery that started in the early '80s. With a strong desire to pull his family away from the streets, Joaquin was focused on putting family first as the foundation for Ruff Ryders, especially considering that the siblings had been separated during their youth. So he recruited his brother and sister, and he's explained the inception of Ruff Ryders by saying, D was a little reluctant at first as the allure of the streets had him focused elsewhere. So I went to Atlanta with my sister to build the foundation. The goal was always for this to be something for the three of us because this has always been about family. Anytime our label partners would send someone to us, we would put one of our family members with them so they could learn what they're doing. They may be the experts, but we want our people to be the new experts. And the best way you become that is by watching and learning. You have to embrace family to work with us, or you'll be too left out to be successful. The name Ruff Ryders was decided upon when the siblings' mother suggested it after she saw the name appear while watching a Western cowboy movie that featured black characters. After they decided to run with the name Ruff Ryders, it was time to get a logo to attach to the brand, which started off as a pit bull with a spiked collar and a pair of guns behind it. After coming to the conclusion that this aggressive image might make the company way too hard to sell in the music industry, a tattoo artist was hired to create the double R logo that we see today. Ruff Ryders got their start as a management company, using their non-stop hustle mentality and initial connections in the music industry to create opportunities for artists. Their first two clients were all from Yonkers, New York, the rugged soloist DMX, and the gritty three lyricists Jadakiss, Styles P, and Sheek Louch, that formed first in high school as the Bomb Squad, then became the Warlocks, and was later shortened to the name that they have had ever since, the LOX. P. Diddy's father and Dean's father were also best friends, so there was a relationship already established there when it came to learning how to move in the music industry from someone that has already been doing it. Another connection that the Dean trio had in the rap game was with the Mount Vernon, New York rap legend Heavy D, as Joaquin explained to The Breakfast Club, saying, "It started with a basic conversation with Heavy D, rest in peace. Heavy D, Mount Vernon, New York. We lived in Mount Vernon. Puffy and all these guys. Basically, we was on 3rd and 3rd. I see your man Heavy D. He was at the Shabazz restaurant. He was talking to us, inquiring about his brother because one of his brothers got shot or whatever. One of his older brothers was with us, his man Jerry. He came down to talk to me about his brother who was hanging out with us in the streets. So I told him, Jerry is good with us. His mother had concerns. Heavy and them was blowing. They were doing really big things over there. They were on TV. They was doing a lot of things. So when I was sitting with Hev and was talking to him about his brother after we had that discussion, I told him, yo, Hev, let me ask you a question. He said, what? I said, I want to get into this music business. How can we get out the streets and into the music business? So he said,
you get an artist you believe in. He said, you make hits and the industry come to you.
I said, that's it? He said, well, I got the DMX cassette tape right here. He gave it to Hev, then Hev gave it to me and said, this is your first artist. I popped it on the 300ZX. From there, I went to see DMX, straight to Yonkers, and that's how our journey started with DMX. Once the Ruff Ryders management firm was established with DMX as the main artist, the energetic rapper led the Dean family straight to the LOX, or the Warlocks as they were known at the time, but there was one problem. They were stuck in a deal with a crew called the Mushmen. It took some back and forth convincing and negotiation from the Ruff Ryders camp to reach a settlement with the Mushmen that would ultimately set Sheek Louch, Styles P, and Jadakiss free from their deal in 1993. Another star from the city of Yonkers, New York that would help champion the LOX is the R&B queen Mary J. Blige. She gave their music to P. Diddy, known then as Puff Daddy, being that this was before Ruff Ryders had gotten their record label off of the ground, Ruff Ryders was managing the Lox. Sheek Louch explained the Mary J. Blige connection to MTV, saying, "She was like a #1 fan for us. She was loving our music before anybody, and she just brought us to Puff. Puff was looking for a group, a rap group, at that time. It was instant. It just clicked like that. It was chemistry."
Mary, it started with her, I know a lot of people know the story, but it started with her playing our mixtapes and all over her shows. She was just loving us, man. And, we were young. I love Mary.
That's the queen.
Yeah, absolutely. She ain't asked us for nothing. Never a nickel. I need this, find this fee. I need nothing. Mary never wanted nothing from us. Never said, yo, but what happened to my money? Nah.
That's beautiful. That's real. That's organic.
As the first rapper that Ruff Ryders was managing, they tried to make some noise with him back in 1993, where he was distributed by Columbia Records for a single called Born Loser. But unfortunately, the song literally didn't win DMX a full-length album at the time. And it was back to the drawing board. He wouldn't commercially release another song for almost 5 years, with the 1998 gold single Get At Me Dog. But before the transition into success could take place, DMX was another Ruff Ryders act that Joaquin, D, and Siobhan were trying to get situated with P. Diddy's Bad Boy Records. But his raw lyrics and rowdy image didn't fit into the clean-cut, R&B-ish rap, shiny suit era that Bad Boy Records was ushering in, with the Notorious B.I.G., Mace, Faith Evans, and the others. DMX's name has several meanings. Originally an acronym for Divine Master of the Unknown, but has also stood for Dark Man X and Dog Man X. It was Irv Gotti, producer and co-founder of Murder Inc. Records, that worked in the capacity of an A&R at Def Jam to get DMX signed to that legendary label in 1997. DMX's Def Jam signing made it possible for Ruff Ryders to get launched as a record label. With that said, DMX's debut studio album, It's Dark and Hell Is Hot, was released on May 12, 1998 through a Def Jam and Ruff Ryders partnership, and was the first official release from Ruff Ryders as a record label. Ruff Ryders had built their own recording facility in Yonkers called Powerhouse Studios, and this was a hub for some of DMX's It's Dark and Hell Is Hot recording sessions. During the making of his first full-length album, all but 2 tracks were produced in-house with Ruff Ryders producers PK, Dame Grease, and literal family member to the Deans, Swizz Beatz, who was basically an unknown at the time, and was only a teenager. Even the guest features on It's Dark and Hell Is Hot were a family affair, with Mace being the only Ruff Ryder outsider, but he was still in their circle because he was signed to Bad Boy Records, just like the Lox. With DMX, Ruff Ryders had a legit bona fide star, able to compete with Rockefeller Records' Jay-Z and Bad Boy Records' Mace. But the added advantage was that DMX's image had something that Jay-Z's and Mace's carefree, sarcasm, and slick designer clothing style lacked in: an ability to relate to the everyday person struggling. DMX wasn't interested in wearing suits and promoting expensive champagne brands in his rhymes. He was in baggy jeans, Timberland boots, and was tapping into his pain and hits like Stop Being Greedy, which was the complete opposite of Jay-Z's Money Ain't a Thing, and Diddy's It's All About the Benjamins, that glamorized lavish spending. DMX was the voice of the have-nots, loud and clear, with the fearless spirit. If there was any question about whether or not there was room for DMX in the late 90s, the proof arrived on May 19, 1998, when It's Dark and Hell Is Hot had a huge debut, managing to hit the #1 spot on the Billboard 200 charts and selling over 250,000 copies in its first week. But that was just the beginning of the roller coaster ride for DMX. It's Dark and Hell Is Hot continued to move units daily, going on to sell 4 million copies in the United States alone and 5 million copies worldwide. Now Ruff Ryders went from the underdogs on the outside looking into sitting front row at the mainstream rap stage. It was Def Jam's leader Leroy Cohen that not only noticed how big of a star the label had on its hands with DMX, but he also pushed DMX to record another album as soon as possible in order to have another album drop that same year. DMX accepted the challenge, and he succeeded, dropping his second studio album, Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood, on December 22nd, 1998, just 7 months after his first album. That might be a no-brainer in this day and age, but back in 1998, dropping 2 albums in the same calendar year was unheard of, with the fear that they would cancel each other out, taking attention away from one to focus on the other. This definitely wasn't a problem for Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood, because the Ruff Ryders Def Jam combination earned itself another #1 on the Billboard 200, and DMX sold more than twice as many albums in his first week than he did the first time around, because Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood sold over 670,000 units in its first week of release, which now has exceeded triple platinum status. Not only was 1998 the year that DMX came in with 2 albums getting released, but he also made his acting debut co-starring with Nas in the Hype Williams directed crime film Belly.
Jamaica is good.
Yeah, Jamaica's good. Yeah. Jamaica's very good. Yeah.
Def Jam released a star-studded Belly that featured tracks from other Ruff Ryders affiliates like The Lox and Drag On, along with Nas, Ghostface Killah, Jay-Z, Sean Paul, Method Man, Nori, and Ja Rule. DMX's acting work would continue steadily into the 2000s with big roles in Romeo Must Die, Exit Wounds, Cradle to the Grave, Last Hour, as well as telling his own story in 2003 by publishing a book of his memoirs called Earl, the autobiography of DMX. With DMX being red hot, it was time to expand the staff at Ruff Ryders, and they hired Jay Icepick Jackson, who also worked as an in-house producer at Ruff Ryders, and Amelia Moore as A&R coordinators. Amelia Moore would eventually move up in the ranks to become the general manager of Ruff Ryders Records, further proof of their desire to build a family culture at Ruff Ryders where they take care of their own. The following year, in 1999, DMX didn't lose any steam whatsoever. In fact, his third album, And Then There Was X, ended up being the highest-selling project in his entire catalog, going 5 times platinum. Not much change on the production side, with the home team players Swizz Beatz, Dame Grease, and P Killer handling the bulk of the beats. The biggest single by far was the Swizz Beatz produced Party Up In Here, gaining a Grammy Award nomination for Best Rap Solo Performance and making it on Rolling Stone's Top 500 Greatest Songs of All Time in 2021. When DMX won Best Rap Album at the 2000 Billboard Music Awards, he kept the Ruff Ryders family vibe alive by having many members of the crew join him on stage to accept it.
I celebrate his life. The success that the song obtains has nothing to do with the reason why I make it.
Swizz Beatz has contributed and is partially responsible for many of DMX's smash hits. These days, Swizz Beatz is also known as the co-creator of Versus, a world-class painter, and the husband of superstar singer Alicia Keys. But back in the 90s, Swizz Beatz was coming up as a teenage DJ with equipment from his uncles and stepfather, and eventually working for his uncle Joaquin and Darren Dean while they were getting their Ruff Ryders record label off the ground. During the late 90s, Swizz's competition typically made sample-based beats from old records. Swizz Beatz chose to create a clean sound with the Korg Trinity and Triton keyboards, creating bold anthems while he was producing tracks at age 16. 1 year later, when he was still only 17 years old, Swizz sold his first beat to Ruff Ryders DMX, which we now know as the mega single Ruff Ryders Anthem. At first, DMX wasn't interested in using that Ruff Ryders Anthem beat. It took some serious convincing for Swizz to get DMX to sit down and write to the music, which only took DMX about 15 minutes to do. DMX told GQ why he wasn't feeling the Ruff Ryders Anthem song at first.
I didn't want to do that song. The beat was simple and repetitive, you know what I mean? And so many other songs with so much substance. I was like...
The song is like ABCs, like elementary. After the success of Ruff Ryders Anthem, Swizz Beatz status grew, getting him in a position to sign to Ruff Ryders Productions and providing his music services for Nori's Banned from TV, Busta Rhymes' Tear the Roof Off, Jay-Z's Money Cash Hoes, Maya's The Best of Me, The Lox's Wild Out, most of the songs of the Ruff Ryders compilation album Ride or Die Volume 1, and the bulk of Eve's debut album Let There Be Eve, Ruff Ryders' First Lady. By 2001, Swizz Beatz had a joint venture with Clive Davis to form his own record label, Full Surface Records, a subsidiary of J Records, with Cassidy as his first artist. Ruff Ryders Entertainment developed a dedicated street team to assist with promoting Ruff Ryders artists and their projects. Along with the music, Ruff Ryders popularized the lifestyle with aspects that included fitness, riding motorcycles, and flashy cars, in order to differentiate themselves from the champagne and diamond jewelry promoting hip-hop labels at the time, like Rockefeller and Bad Boy. Ruff Ryders focused on the rough side of their name and came across as a more aggressive, down-to-earth, relatable family bonded by loyalty. With the extension of the brand called Ruff Ryders Lifestyles, they were able to spread and capture the attention of a broad spectrum of society, everyone from military soldiers to law enforcement officials, with their community-based charity involvement with homeless shelters, local boys and girls clubs, Red Cross, Toys for Tots, and such as Cure Violence, turning their supporters into a unified community. Members of Ruff Ryders Lifestyles even wore vests to show their support as part of a motorcycle club and a car club, representing the Double R family through car and motorcycle shows and fitness programs in their local communities. Before she became Ruff Ryders' First Lady, Eve was a young Philadelphia MC seeking her big break. She eventually relocated to Los Angeles, where she signed a deal with Dr. Dre on his Aftermath record label, but the distance between the two artists caused problems, as she explained to MTV. Aftermath was my first home, with Dr. Dre, but me and Dre just couldn't get along. I'm a strong chick and I don't like being told what to do. I don't care if you're the best at what you do. Dre just knows how to push your buttons. But I just have to say, every time he pushed my buttons, he got the best out of me. So he knew what he was doing. Jimmy Iovine, the president of Interscope Records, contacts Eve stating there was a crew called Ruff Ryders that he felt she would be a good fit for. This meant that she would have to travel from Philly to Yonkers to meet them in person. Ruff Ryders CEO Joaquin said, "The essence of battling, we got it from DMX. He's the god of battle. So anybody that wants to come in, they have to go through a process of battling." After Eve arrived at the Ruff Ryders Yonkers, New York studio, it was filled with nothing but dudes. Soon as a beat was put on, she was expected to battle everyone, including DMX and Dragon, which she did, and didn't give up. Clearly, she proved herself because she ended up getting signed as the first lady of Ruff Ryders, and she explained her exit from Aftermath by saying, "It wasn't too long after Eminem was signed that I got dropped from Aftermath, and I was devastated. I had to go back home, back to my mom's house. I had to get back on the bus. It humbled me." However, she was dropped from the label within 8 months. Back home in Philly, she fell into a brief state of depression, but another opportunity soon presented itself. Out of the blue, she received a call from her managers to come to a recording studio in the South Bronx. She would meet the Ruff Ryders crew and win them over with her rapping skills. In 1999, she released her debut album, Let There Be Eve. Eve's collaboration with pop singer Gwen Stefani from the group No Doubt gave Eve her biggest mainstream hit, the Grammy Award-winning Let Me Blow Your Mind from her second album, Scorpion. "She gave me an audience I didn't have, and vice versa. I gave her an audience she didn't have." Eve notes of collaborating with the No Doubt lead singer. "I've always been a huge No Doubt fan, a huge Gwen fan, and we were the same label, and I was like, why not make this happen? As much as she was a girly girl like I was, she was a tomboy like I was. So I recognized that in her. I knew it was gonna work." Let Me Blow Your Mind won the very first Grammy Award in 2002 for Best Rap Song Collaboration, which was a new category back then. Eve's 3 albums with Ruff Ryders ended up selling over 8 million copies across the world. After Jadakiss, Styles P, and Sheek Louch released their platinum-selling album as The Lox in 1998 called Money, Power, and Respect, they felt like their street credibility was getting compromised with their flashy music videos and even more flamboyant, shiny suits that their Bad Boy Records boss Diddy was making them wear to fit in with the label's pop-friendly aesthetic. The fallout between The Lox and Diddy's Bad Boy brand started back in '99, with the Ruff Ryders in a position to sign The Lox to their record label to join DMX and Eve. But the problem is that Diddy wasn't in a hurry to let The Lox leave after one album. To get The Lox off Bad Boy cost the company $3 million to buy the group out of their contract with Diddy. But this payout didn't include The Lox's publishing, which Diddy would continue to own. With The Lox now locked and loaded on Ruff Ryders though, they would go on to much success, starting with The Lox's second album, We Are the Streets in 2001, strong gold-selling album that was largely produced by Swizz Beatz. The gold plaques would continue with Jadakiss's solo debut, Kiss the Game Goodbye in 2001, Styles P's A Gangster and a Gentleman in 2002, and Jadakiss's second album, Kiss of Death in 2004, also sold over 500,000 copies. The first half of the 2000s proved to be a long-running championship season for Ruff Ryders Records, because not only did the new addition of The Lox as a group and the members as soloists end up being lucrative, DMX and Eve both continued to flourish. Eve's second album, Scorpion, in 2001 was a platinum project, and her 3 Ruff Ryders efforts, Evolution in 2002, went gold. DMX gave Ruff Ryders 2 more big albums, The Great Depression in 2001 and Grand Champ in 2003, both selling over 1 million copies. But even with DMX grabbing platinum plaques for his 4th and 5th albums, this was still a big drop-off from his first 3 projects that sold no less than 1 million apiece. The Bronx, New York rapper Dragon was initially signed to the Ruff Ryders entertainment imprint backed by Interscope Records for a successful debut album Opposite of H2O, which dropped on March 28, 2000, and debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200. With the help of production from Ruff Ryders' in-house producers Swizz Beatz, P Killer Tracks, J Ice Pick J Jackson, and DJ Shock, and vocal appearances from Ruff Ryders Eve, The Lox, Styles, Jadakiss, and DMX, Opposite of H2O was able to hold its own weight in the growing Ruff Ryders catalog. Eventually sold over 500,000 copies. Dragon joined Virgin Records after leaving Interscope for his second album, Hell and Back, in 2004, but was soon dropped after the album didn't live up to the first one's numbers. Ruff Ryders' deal with Interscope Records ended in 2003, with just Jadakiss, Eve, and Styles staying as part of Interscope's Ruff Ryders roster. There were also rumors at the time that Ruff Ryders was falling apart, with Sheek Louch discussing some of the changings that were happening behind the scenes with The Lox, Eve, and DMX after the release of his first solo album, Walk With Me, which wasn't with Ruff Ryders. It was on The Lox's D-Block Records in partnership with Universal. It's no beef. People may think, damn, it's over for Double R. They ain't doing nothing. Eve left, X doing this, Lox is yelling out D Block. I told him that's not the case. Double R still has the potential to be the top label on earth. At the time when Double R had everybody, we were all kids to some extent. Now Eve said, I want to get into this acting thing. I want to get a clothing line too. X said, this movie stuff is working. The Lox said, we're going to do solo projects. We could get a label. That's the only thing that happened. We grew. Nobody's falling apart. Nobody hates this person or that person. Next up, Ruff Ryders signed a joint venture with Virgin Records, bringing along a Miami-born Chinese rapper to Ruff Ryders, who had been a standout on BET's 106 & Park Freestyle Fridays rap battles. But as the new Ruff Ryder releases started to trickle out in 2004, it began to feel like the beginning of the end was near. Dragon's second studio album, Hell and Back, released in February 2004, was the first album in the Virgin deal, but the sales were much weaker than his first album. After only peaking at number 47 on the Billboard 200, Dragon was soon dropped by Virgin Records, and Hell and Back would be Dragon's last album with Ruff Ryders. Before battling rappers on national television, Jin went from facing off with rappers in Miami during high school to relocating to Flushing, Queens, New York in 2001, performing freestyles and selling his own mixtapes hand to hand. When Jin was competing on the televised BET's 106 & Park Freestyle Fridays, he won all 7 of his competitions in a row, putting him in the Freestyle Friday Hall of Fame, mixing English and Cantonese words into his rhymes. That night of his Hall of Fame induction was the same night that he made his public announcement he had signed a record deal with none other than Ruff Ryders. Asian rappers in the mainstream side of the music industry weren't a common occurrence at the time, nor is it even common now. What made Jin stick out and have to face the pressure of not being taken seriously by many of his critics, Jin was clearly aware of the odds stacked against him at the time, and he addressed it directly with his first single under Ruff Ryders called Learn Chinese, produced by Wyclef Jean from the Fugees. Learn Chinese sampled the 1992 song They Want Effects from the hip-hop group Das Effects. For Jin's second single, he almost had the track I Gotta Love featuring Kanye West and produced by Ye as well. But this single had to be switched to Senorita because Rockefeller Records were afraid that their artist Kanye West would get overexposed, especially with singles from Kanye West's debut album The College Dropout still being released. Neither Learn Chinese nor Senorita turned out to be big hits. To make matters worse, Jin's album was supposed to hit stores during the summer of 2003, but it ended up getting delayed for over a year by the label. Unfortunately, Jin's debut album, The Rest Is History, failed to keep the Double R brand thriving. When the album finally arrived on October 19, 2004, it only sold 20,000 copies and only made it to number 54 on the Billboard 200. With a lack of promotion from Virgin Records and free music becoming a massive problem at the music industry with online piracy websites like Napster, Dragon's second album and Jin's first album were big enough flops in 2004 that Virgin Records and Ruff Ryders ended up parting ways. The year 2005 saw only one release from Ruff Ryders, Volume 4, The Redemption, released through a smaller company than Ruff Ryders was used to, the independent record company Artemis Records. The album peaked at number 40 on the Billboard Top 200 and only managed to sell around 25,000 copies in its first week. Ultimately, Ruff Ryders Volume 4, The Redemption ended up being the only Ruff Ryders album released through Artemis. Then, during that same year, in 2005, DMX started working on his sixth studio album, which was originally supposed to be released through Def Jam, but because of the growing tension between DMX and then Def Jam president Jay-Z, DMX ended up leaving Def Jam altogether. DMX's sixth album, Year of the Dog, again, was released in August 2006 through Ruff Ryders, Sony Urban Music, and Columbia Records. Even though it debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, it ended up being the very first DMX album not to go platinum. In fact, it didn't even go gold either at the time. Then the decline of Ruff Ryders continued with Jin and Dragon leaving. Between 2005 and 2009, Sheek Louch, Styles P, and Jadakiss would drop solo albums, but they didn't sell enough to add sales plaques to Ruff Ryders' walls. And the record company side to Double R was on pause due to a lack of funding and distribution from a bigger record label. In 2010, the Ruff Ryders founders Joaquin and Darren Dean made the decision to switch up the brand with a new venture called Ruff Ryders Indie, as a Fontana Universal affiliated distribution company, which put an end to Ruff Ryders Entertainment. Ruff Ryders Indie Inc. has signed new artists to the label such as the Harlem battle rapper Mook, Joaquin Dean's son, Lil Wah, Shella, and Hugo. On November 21st, 2011, they released a compilation album called Ruff Ryders Past, Present, and Future that featured songs from not just the new acts, but also the established names like DMX, Eve, Lox, Dragon, Swizz Beatz, and Cassidy. But ultimately, it didn't capture the magic of the past. The same glue of putting family first that kept Ruff Ryders together is the same foundation that made them put the company on hold. When Dean suffered from a serious bike accident on a 3-wheel T-Rex in the Hunts Point section of the Bronx and was sent to Lincoln Medical Hospital, the priority for Joaquin and his sister was immediately to bring their brother out of his 3-month coma. At one point, he was even pronounced dead. People say that you just disappeared like that, but we made a conscious decision, just to clear the record, made a conscious decision to stop doing what we were doing from the industry, just so that we could concentrate on saving D's life, because he was in a coma for many, many months. He had to relearn, re-talk, re-walk, everything. So we felt that was more of a present thing than any other thing we could actually do. The music didn't mean anything to us at that point. At the time, D was the glue behind all the music and the artists and keeping them together. That was a difficult time, not just for Ruff Ryders, but for the Dean family. So we had to stop, and he's here now, and that speaks for itself. DMX had been arrested approximately 30 times, with many of those incidents taking place during DMX's time while on Ruff Ryders, for offenses that included any number of things from drug possession, probation violation, failure to pay child support, robbery, assault, carjacking, animal cruelty, pretending to be a federal agent, and just many, many more. It was clearly difficult for DMX to consistently keep recording and schedule long-term consecutive tour dates. DMX's life and career were also plagued by his long-standing battle with drug addiction, something he's been very transparent about, explaining the origin of his substance abuse that began in the mid-'80s when he was 14 years old. He claimed that a mentor of his, Reddy Ron, gave him a blunt that was laced with crack at a more innocent time in his life when DMX wasn't smoking weed or cigarettes. Crack cocaine had continued to confront him throughout his adult life many times over, including in 2016 when DMX was found unconscious in the parking lot of a Yonkers, New York hotel, having overdosed and not breathing. He was revived by a medic using Narcan medication that treats opioid overdoses in emergency situations. No drugs were found at the scene, but Page 6 reported that a witness said DMX had taken a powder drug before the overdose. On April 2nd, 2021, DMX faced another grim situation. After experiencing a heart attack, DMX was rushed to the hospital and placed on life support in a vegetative state. Then about a week later, on April 9th, 2021, DMX passed away at age 50, leaving behind his fiancée and a total of 15 children by 11 different women. Eve, the Ruff Ryders' original First Lady, left music altogether, with her 4th album, Lip Lock, having been released in 2013, and it wasn't part of her run for Ruff Ryders projects. Lip Lock came out on her own label, From the Rib, distributed through Red Distribution. Much of Eve's entertainment career in the 2000s, 2010s, and the 2020s has expanded over to film. Barbershop, Barbershop 2, The Woodsman, The Cookout, Whip It, and television. Eve, Glee, Jane the Virgin, Empire, and Queens. One benefit of having kept Ruff Ryders run as a loyal, down-to-earth family is that when many of their biggest artists went on to start their own endeavors and empires, like The Lox with D-Block, Eve with her acting and fashion, and DMX acting in Bloodline Records, there weren't any hard feelings. According to Joaquin, we raise our artists, and they grow up in the industry to go on and do bigger and better things. We never wanted to hold anybody back. When one wins, we all win. Make sure to subscribe for more.